Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Woof! I don't have anything really to say at the beginning of this video. Just a quick reminder though, actually, you know what? I'll do my reminder now. I was going to do it at the end, and I'll do the sponsors at the top of the show. So first reminder, PAX East. It's coming up this week, means I probably won't have a lot of videos being made, but I'll be there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I'm leaving Sunday morning, so apologies if you won't be there on Sunday, or won't be there until Sunday. Saturday at 1:30 p.m., I have a meet and greet over at the Twitch booth where I'll be giving out Kappa cards. And I have my Kappa cards right in front of me. Where did I put them? Kappa cards! Here they are. Kappa cards. Here, with the green screen, they're going to look all kinds of fucked up, but it's Chocobo's not even green. That's not fair. It's Chocobos, Aloha, me, there's a Moogle, and they're in a plastic case, so it looks kind of shiny right there. But I'll be giving these away. And honestly, even if you can't go to the meet and greet on Saturday and you're at PAX East, just find me and I'll give you one of these anyway. I just give them out. I have so many. I have like thousands of these things. I just give them away every time I go. Courtesy of Twitch, because they give us these collectible little Kappa cards. So find me at PAX East, and hopefully you enjoy it. For the other thing at the beginning, we'll actually do the sponsor list at the top of the show instead of at the end of the show today. So, sponsor list, we have a Patreon, people who support over there. There's a few different tiers that you can support for. We shout them out every week during the weekly Q&A and during State of the Realm, depending on which tiers you qualify for. So, right off the bat, we have our Patron of Light, or Patron of Light. It sounds kind of weird. Nope, that's not going to work. Don't worry, it's covered in plastic, so you don't have to worry about getting the card that I just rubbed my face against. But we have our Patron of Light, Khuja Cross of the Jenova server. If you're watching it over on YouTube right now, there will be an image over the screen. If you're watching it on Twitch, just my ugly mug. But they've been a big supporter over on Patreon for the past several months. So giving them a shout out. Thank you for your monthly support. The rest of these names, we got quite a few. One of them added to the list. It is the first of the month. So this list is definitely not 100% accurate because Patreon needs to process payments and stuff like that on the first of the month. So I'm sure that I'll need to make adjustments to this before State of the Realm this week, but we'll be all right. We'll just read what I got. So first we have our standard sponsors. We have Frey Blackheart, we have Sidus Oreo on Shiva, we have Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro. I'm gonna move these over here. Cheesecake from Leviathan, Sploda, That Lame Weeb, Ashen Emiya of Cerberus, Argoti Tristam of Midgardsormr, Fafarian, Rendil, Giraffeswillrule, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. For our elite sponsors, we have Nyrek Vizsla, the Emerald Dragoon. We have Kifka and the Grey Eagles on Exodus, Dark Graver, Katayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rah Xephon of Exodus, Rynoet Westos the Purple Warrior, Hedrick Redsteel on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Zodiac, Sour Cream and Chive from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Goetia Valfer of Siren, Hirsch First of Fairy, Phoenix Down Free Company on Goblin, and Saren from Zodiac. Finally, we have our premium sponsors, Diablo, Holy Tabasco, Red Thorn Asura, Kernai Oni, Asken Hawk from Shiva, Oscar, Crass015, Mustang, Serenity FC on Ultros, Kat Kazuma, Kiriyoshi, and the Reckless Tea Party on Cactar, Ignis Beargun from Diablos, Velestra of Famfrit, Noct Cordis from Excalibur. I don't know why I couldn't say that. Krovos Moonscar, Nakaniami of Balmung, Johnny Odin of Tomberry, Private Mikey, Spike, Nighting Kurasami, Rudy Rudiger, Tinkolossus, Killer Hackman, Raul Jr, Ramil Gaming, Kiltastic Jones. I know that list definitely needs to be adjusted for next month because I had some people send me messages last month while I was away regarding what would be happening with theirs for the following month. So if you're on there and you don't belong, you do belong, or you should be there and you're not, just send me a message as a reminder. It's always appreciated, but I'll be taking a look at that list anyway. Anyway, on that note, I am going to get into the Q&A. I have a few questions, and I want to end my live stream on time today, so let's get started. All right, question number 1. Welcome back to the Road of Happiness. A whole road of happiness? That's dangerous. All right, so we have a 5.0 Black Mage question. I was going to say I don't qualify to answer Black Mage questions. I qualify even less for 5.0 Black Mage, which doesn't exist yet. Once I was in Fractal Normal again, and I realized, and questioners recommended Ishgard Housing, 3 questions. Well, of course you recommend it, because it's 1 question that's 3 questions. Let's do it. I once flew through the Cloud Sea, and I had a thought. Should the Ishgard Housing area be located in the Cloud Sea? Well, then it wouldn't be an Ishgard Housing area, it'd be a Cloud Sea housing area. Should Ishgard have 2 housing areas? No, because we barely can get the 4 we have functioning all that properly. And do you think we won't get Ishgard Housing at all? I don't think we ever get Ishgard Housing. It's something people want, but it's also part of a system that's people regularly complain about how housing works in the first place. So adding more locations when we still don't have a 100% viable housing system, or at least one that functions probably the way the developers themselves want it to, is a big no. Also, Ishgard has the problem of being a rundown piece of shit, and even though, you know, for those of us who are far enough in the game to have it fixed, it still visually looks like they haven't recovered from 1,000 years of war. And having a housing area that looks really nice and then having a city that doesn't, just a little bit weird. And I just don't see it happening. So hopefully that was an adequate answer. Question number... Oh boy, this is a long one. Hey dude, great to have you back. It's my first time here, so as a bonus, I have a couple of extra paragraphs for this question. Anyway, I wanted to ask about healer balancing. Okay. It's often said that all the jobs in the game are capable of clearing all the content, but that's true for the healers as well. But it's also true some jobs are more sought after than others because of their utility. It's pretty decent white mage, 07 Savage down purple logs with the occasional orange. I took a few weeks off for personal reasons, left my raid group as to not inconvenience them, and now I'm having trouble finding a new group to get started on Kefka. I found that most mid-core groups are now either deep into God Kefka or the whole tier on farm, and are working on optimization, which means they want scholars and astros, not white mages, because they have a whole array of buttons they can press to automatically give out free DPS boosts, as we don't. What you're saying right now doesn't sound accurate to what I've seen at all. I've seen Astro just fall way to the wayside, unless a group is like at the point where they fully cleared it and they're not looking for someone who hasn't cleared it. Groups that have already cleared it, I could understand that, but the majority of my experience is white mage is more sought after than Astro. Maybe for... And then for pugs especially, I don't know. I haven't seen what you're saying right here, but I'm also not looking for a raid group prior to clearing Kefka, so it may be why it's not my thing. I don't know. I see way more people valuing white mage over Astro just because it makes progressing on that fight super easy. Like really, really fucking easy when you have the utilities that white mage has for instant healing up the group. A single cure 3 adds so much value to white mage, even when it comes to overhealing. I'm just, man, I don't know. I'm just surprised to learn this, because like I said, I'm not looking for a static or a pug. So I don't know. I'm surprised to learn it. It's probably true. You're probably right, but that's crazy. That's crazy, because everyone I know still says they love white mage so much more for that fight. That's just it. That's just what people I affiliate with. They just go Astro occasionally for, you know, the balance, which is about it. And I don't think this idea you have, or taking the arrow and the spire and throwing them on white mage, is going to do much, because guess what? It's still not the balance. Ultimately, it's still not the balance. I don't think they need to weaken Astro at all. I think the healers are in a perfect spot. Anyone who's a fuckhead enough to want a weekly clear and to want a specific healer for a weekly clear, I can understand wanting a scholar or wanting at least to have 2 different healers. But if someone's a fuckhead and they just want scholar and Astro, then they're just being a fuckhead. That's all that really is. That's like when somebody has like 3 summoners, but they still want a ninja for that last slot, when you've already completely foregone needing to give a shit with your previous compositions and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's just weird. I don't think they need to weaken Astro. I don't think they need to strengthen white mage at all. I think all 3 of the healers are in the perfect spot, and I actually prefer white mage overall, just from a generic progression standpoint, over the other 2, especially because of the ease of play that white mage actually has. So I'm just surprised to learn this. So I don't think any of the healers need rebalancing. I think that's the one role that's like they've done perfectly at this point. So I don't know. That's just I don't think the healers need rebalancing. That's just my answer to the question. All right, so question number 3. Hey there, Happy. First time posting, so I have a first time bonus of me pretending to be your puppet if we're ever in an instance together and you are on Monk, so you can get in some Puppet Master RP. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna give me the same feeling. My question is about gearing. I played since 1.0, so I'm not new, but I've always been super casual in terms of gearing, just under the assumption that if one piece of gear has more main stat, the other it's better. The introduction of new artifact gear with 5 materia slots, how do I discern specifically if those extra materia slots make the artifact better gear than our current tome gear, is if it's only better by a few item levels? The very simple answer is to find stat weights for your job. That's not been something that's been as much of a discussion. People just kind of say how much, like which stat is the most valuable right now. People just spam that stat because now they don't have to worry as much. You know, without accuracy, you don't need to worry about having a certain amount of accuracy than worrying about the individual stat weights. People just go, well, these stats are best for these reasons, and maybe skill speed and spell speed has certain breakpoints for the different jobs. So it's really going to come down to finding those numbers and just comparing them. But even so, on average, item level will make the difference. I'd say the bigger comparison there is the tank accessories. That's like the one case where it's not as simple as item level. The artifact stuff, a little bit more so in the category that's still the tome gear, especially because you're going to be able to upgrade it, will remain better. We don't know how high they'll upgrade the artifact armor itself in 4.3x. If it's within 5 item levels, it gets a little bit dicier, but if it's within 10 item levels, it's not nearly as dicey of a decision because it takes a lot of off stat to equal a couple of main stats, and 10 item levels is a pretty significant difference, at least on left side pieces. So in general though, if you find stat weights and just plug in numbers, that'll give you exactly the answer you're looking for. Question number 4. Yo Haps, what's up? From what I hear, the general impression of the difficulty of raids from Heavensward to Stormblood is that Gordius was extremely tough. Midas was very tough, but not as bad as Gordius, and Creator was only a little bit tough, with Delta and Sigma being around Creator and Ultimate being way above Gordius. I have a slight issue with... So, it's not really fair to judge Gordius versus Ultimate, because Gordius had actual gear progression, whereas Ultimate was a flat challenge that didn't get easier with gear because you couldn't get any more gear for it. So, I don't know, because I'd say that of a well-designed fight, Ultimate's way above Gordius, but of a fuckest designed version, Gordius's A4 Savage was just the most fuckest design of anything I've ever done. And we were more likely to die of boredom and then eventually Nisi than you were to ever actually feel like you were being challenged in that fight. So, I guess that's not part of the question, but anyway. Assuming I'm not massively incorrect, where would first coil, second coil, Savage, and final coil sit on the Creator Midas? Final coil is around Creator. We didn't have cooldown resets way back when. Same with Gordius and Midas. We didn't have cooldown resets for those raid tiers. Final coil, I'd say, kind of falls around the Creator difficulty. Second coil, definitely above Creator in my opinion. I don't necessarily think the fights got easier with Creator. I think by then the amount of quality of life we'd have gotten made it just kind of, comparing those two experiences is very, very different. First coil is a fucking joke. Half of first coil didn't even work. But from a fight design standpoint, first coil was a fucking joke. Like, if you were to release first coil right now, it would take like 5 hours for someone to world first it. Like, if it was brand new, you released it right now, it would take like 5 hours to clear the whole fucking tier. It's like that much of a joke. And second coil Savage sits pretty highly. It definitely sits closer to Midas, I'd probably say. And depending on which fight you're comparing it to, on average, the big thing about second coil Savage is that the difficulty wasn't necessarily linear with that. It wasn't designed like a raid tier is, where they try to make the final 2 fights more difficult. A lot of people, turn 6 Savage wasn't that bad. Most people would probably compare that to something out of Midas, but the other 3 fights, I mean, people generally say turn 9 Savage was easier than turn 7 and turn 8 Savage, and people argue over which one was harder, turn 7 or turn 8 Savage. I'm of the opinion turn 8 Savage was definitely the hardest of the bunch, but they definitely sit closer to the Midas and Gordius level, especially because, kind of like Ultimate, you couldn't outgear those fights. You can technically now, but if you're doing them legitimately, you did them at item level 110, and it was a hell of an experience back then. So it's second coil Savage definitely sits at the higher point, but first coil a joke, second coil probably closer to Midas, and final coil close to Creator. Before answering this next one, just to clear up, if you release second coil today, it probably wouldn't be regarded nearly as difficult as Midas. So again, that's going off of feeling of progressing in that raid tier. And of course with cooldown resets and all that junk. But that's a whole nother discussion. It's hard to compare them accurately. So let's move on to the next question. Number 5. Hiya, Haps. Hope you're having a good day. It's been good. Can't complain. One question for you today. Thanks. Why is Sigma Raid being so stingy with ninja gear? Have you seen my main character? Ha ha ha. You're just unlucky. Trust me, I could do with less ninja gear. Alright, number 6. Hey, Haps. Glad you're back. Got a couple questions for you. 1, I know on Monk you said never to delay a GCD. Is there ever an exception? So there's not an exception to that. You still never want to delay a GCD for Monk. You're giving an example of Takrita Buchan with Riddle of Fire active. You don't want to delay the GCD, because the only way you end up in the situation is if Riddle of Fire is I guess, a second away and you want to wait for it, you would never delay a GCD by a whole second. And automatically, by waiting for the off GCD, you're minimizing it to at least half a second. So you're probably waiting a minimum of half a second anyway. So in total, you're burning about a whole second of GCD there, minimum, just to wait for something. Also, the other situation in which this could happen, that your exact described example, is that you didn't get to the rear in time to crit the boot shine. If it's case number 2, that just means you were too slow getting into position, and that's what you need to adjust. Waiting at least a second, maybe even longer, just to get rid of the fire, you have to consider the amount of total potency you're losing over the course of a fight every time you do that. Every time you clip your GCD by half a second, you do that 4 or 5 times in a fight, that's a total GCD you've just lost. Which GCD it is, I can't say for certain without knowing exactly where you'd be in your rotation otherwise, but it's a huge loss to lose, anywhere from like 100 to 400 potency off of that just because you wanted to delay it. 20% of your potency is never going to equal that much unless you have some insane numbers that actually allow it to lead up to that. And even then, if you're doing it that often, you'll probably lose more than one GCD. You'll probably start losing multiple GCDs over the course of a fight if it's a habit that you find yourself in frequently. So the answer is to your question is still no, but to give it some more explanation, that is why the answer is no. As for question number 2, as an idea for a show, video, State of the Realm, would you ever want to get people who are masters of their job to discuss their thoughts, pros, cons, tips, tricks, used at a high level, stat priorities, even AoE trash pulls? So having an expert on the job isn't a bad idea, but going into those kind of details, that's something that I don't feel like State of the Realm is necessarily there for. Because then people who don't play the job don't really give a shit about watching that show that week. So it doesn't really have any sort of, I guess, reach is the best way to put it. Getting people who are great at their jobs and talking about content generally has a bit more reach. But just talking about, like, imagine one show on Dragoon, one show on I don't find that to be a valuable use of an entire something that's, only happens every 7 days. I feel like getting multiple people on the show and talking about job comparisons and maybe some of these topics come up, I find that would be more valuable. Like if I wanted to get an expert on Bard and an expert on Machinist and have a show about the balance between the ranged physical DPS, that to me sounds like more of a show than bring on an expert for Bard and talk about how to AoE in dungeons. You know what I mean? Just thinking about it from that perspective. All right, oh boy. Okay, no, this isn't the. So I take a look at the questions before I actually read them here, and I just look at how long they are. I thought this was the one. The next one is going to be insanely long. This one just has a few questions on it. So question number 7. Hey, Haps, I know you've heard this countless times, but at the risk of sounding like a broken record, glad you're back. As a returner bonus, take a crossroll, Shadewalker, and Smokescreen. Yes, I can stand. That's a person I like. That's a good first time bonus. This is a bit of a speculation question or speculative question. I was curious to hear your thoughts. I'm in the camp that really enjoys Eureka, and there's a couple of elements of it I really enjoy. Okay, well, this'll be a fun one. The way the grind was masked. It's definitely a placebo kind of thing, but I enjoyed how getting a relic in Eureka felt. Mindset shifted from I'm going to work on my relic today to I'm going to try to get a few levels in Eureka today, and that kind of progression made the entire thing a little less sluggish somehow. 2. And this one is a big one. The speed of subsequent relic pieces. The grind to getting your first weapon still took a bit of time, not unlike previous relics, but after you hit the threshold, you can start earning other pieces of gear absurdly quickly. Actually made Eureka the de facto place to go to gear up ults for me, and I feel like this is a much better place for the relic to be in, compared to previous steps where you had to do the entire quest line front to back to create additional gear pieces. And I don't know why I expected a third point. So my question is, do you think this is going to be the new standard, or at least for 4.x? Or can these mostly be attributed to how simple by design the first step was? The first step was always simple by design, so I don't expect so here's the thing. I expect this to be kind of the way you can expect the steps to go going forward in terms of speed plus reproducing, upgrading the other pieces. I do think that core aspect, the second one you listed, is going to be maintained even through the future steps, even if they're not as simple as the one that we just had right now. That being said, will it continue past 4.x? Will it be the new standard for everything going forward? You know what? I can't even look that far into the future and think about that, because we don't even know exactly how Eureka's going to pan out all the way yet. We can only take a few little statements here and there, more areas, multiple steps, Obviously, the item level of the piece is increasing. Different gameplay elements being added. Like, we could take those statements at face value, but we still don't even know how this actually plays out from now till the end. So I want to wait to see all of that and the entirety of Eureka, and then we can revisit this question about whether or not this becomes the new standard for 5.x, 6.x, etc., etc., because I feel like we'll have a better grasp on what that standard actually is by the end of Eureka. All right, question number 8. Okay, Haps, I got 3 questions for this week. The first one is kind of long, but the second and third are pretty quick. This is the one that looks like a thesis paper. All right, before you start my wall of text, I want to give you a bonus. If anyone else brings up Blitzball, they will get blitzed in the balls. All right, maybe you've earned me actually reading most of this thesis. All right, question 1. As I see this becoming more and more plausible, do you think we're going to get a 4.6 patch? As they did talk about maybe doing this early on in Stormblood's life. But before you answer, let me list a few reasons why else. I don't think I want to read all the reasons because it's a long fucking reason. Okay, I'll TLDR the reasons. One is if we were going to get a main scenario trial fight, we wouldn't have any time if we didn't have a 4.6. So with 4.5, with 4.3 to 4.5, we'd have to finish up the 4 lords. I'd like to remind people that in 2.5, they did Chrysalis, they did Steps of Faith, they did Odin. They did do a ton of them. They just separated them, 2 of them by the 0.5 patch, and then we had Odin on top of that. And I feel like there was something else I'm missing. But we did have multiple main scenario trials. I think they're trying to move away from main scenario trials overall, outside of ones like Shinryu, just because of, I guess, the implications of getting people to queue for it becomes a little bit more difficult as time goes on. But they run into that issue with a lot of stuff. So it's not a major deterrent, but it's definitely, I feel like they've moved away from doing it as frequently. At the end of an expansion, I wouldn't mind, but will they do it? They didn't do it for 3.5, did they? We had Belsar's Wall, and then we had the solo instance, but we didn't have a main scenario. Did we have a main scenario trial? I don't think we did for 3.5. So, I mean, we don't need to have one overall. I feel like, I don't know why my brain wants to tell me that we had one, but I, for the life of me, don't remember one. So I'm just, yeah, I don't think we had one, period. We just had, oh, yeah, we had Zervin. Oh, you did have Nidhogg in 3.3, and you do use Nidhogg as an example here. So, I don't think we need one, but I think Nidhogg counts enough. We just didn't have one for the end of the expansion. And I don't think we need to have another one. It would be cool. I'm never against it, but I don't look at it as a reason as to why we have to have a 4.6. The other one is for Omega, your boy Sephiroth. So obviously the theory that if we had a 4.4 and a 4.6, that we would get 2 more tiers of Omega. And that's fine. I think that to some degree holds merits, but I'd like to present another piece of evidence against, not against 4.6, but against having 2 more tiers of Omega. So looking at 4.4, 4.5, 4.6. If 4.5 and the expansion is the very next thing is the expansion. Let's assume there's about a 5 to 6 month gap where we don't necessarily get new content, we just get quality of life updates. Now, if you want to fill in a 4.6 in that time, you have a few options. You can either extend the expansion launch back a little bit more to give the dev team some extra time and just include a 4.6 for the sake of doing it, or you use the 4.6 patch to fill in the time between the last major patch and to just keep people busy before the expansion comes out. So we have a few problems with 4.6 filling in the second way that I described it. One is that it would mean that there would be a lot of resources taken away from the expansion development and put towards creating this 4.6. Whereas with 4.5 and 4.55, the idea is to just keep us busy a little bit, and then people kind of start to, trickle out. I was gonna say trickle out until the expansion comes out, and then everyone's back on its hype again. As for item level problems, if 4.6 introduced a new raid tier and increased the item level again, they would not go immediately from an item level increase into the expansion. The closest thing we had to that was 3.55's diadem with the 280 weapons, because they'd have to do a catch-up patch basically between 4.6 and the expansion launch. Would they do a 4.7? They'd definitely have to delay the expansion release for that, or they'd have to, after only 6 to 8 weeks, remove the sync, remove everything, or they'd have to make the entire raid tier not have an item level increase, and all those things don't sound like very likely options from the dev team altogether. So I think if a 4.6 happens, I don't even think it's here's an Omega here's another main scenario. I think it's like a bare bones patch that's just busy work until we get, it's almost like a continuation of 4.5, like 4.55 would normally be, not a full other raid tier. I see the probability of a full other raid tier to be like 0, especially without a then follow-up catch-up patch to help people get caught up in their item level before the expansion actually releases. There's so many like design problems with that I don't see them doing it without then also hastily doing something very different immediately after. So that's how I feel about that one. And reason number 3, where's the damn crafting gathering gear? I couldn't tell you about that. I don't think that a 4.6 is unlikely or impossible. Do I think that it will be a traditional even numbered patch even if they do it? I feel the answer is no. It's an opinion, but that's what my opinion is, that even if we got a 4.6, it would not be another Omega tier. It would be much closer to the content size of a 0.5 patch than that of a full numbered patch, in which case I'd rather just get a 4.58 with something actually in it that isn't just the Echo plus unlocking the last raid tier, stuff like that. So that's I don't know, that's how I feel. Or not even that. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's accurate. 4.58. Yeah, so we'll go with that. So that's my answer. No, I don't think it'll happen. And if it does, it won't be traditional. But anyway, moving into the second question, as that was only question number 1. Are they planning on making us fight Exdeath again based on the end of Eureka? So I can already tell you right here, the reason why you said that, are they going to shoehorn in Exdeath with no story, then turn around and give him a backstory? So Exdeath doesn't have no backstory, I think is the first misconception here. Exdeath, everything that Omega creates is based off of a story or a folktale that he has heard about a legend that may or may not have actually been true, a myth, any of those things, which is why we have Halicarnassus in Hawk Manor, and then we have Halicarnassus again inside of Exdeath. Now, on top of just a little bit of naming overlap between the games, it's very likely that the Halicarnassus of Omega is based on the myth of the Halicarnassus, the void creature that we encounter inside of the Hawk Manor itself. So it's not unfeasible that Exdeath's legend was not a myth, and that he did actually exist in some way, even if not in the over-imagined method in which he is displayed in Omega, because Omega's not basing it off fact, he's basing it off of his imagination of what this creature or this individual would have looked like. So, everything in Omega is not real. So he has a slight backstory to say what myth he's from, but that's not the real him, if he even is a real thing. So it wouldn't be impossible for us to fight a Kefka or an Exdeath inside of the game itself, inside of Eorzea. It's just not a likely thing for them to do, because they'd either have to make it exactly the same or bastardize it in such a way that people would barely recognize it and probably get upset. Just because they're playing a similar story with the Dawn Warriors doesn't mean it's Exdeath. There is also the possibility, just to avoid using Exdeath, they could use Enuo, who's another character well, not from Final Fantasy V. He's from Final Fantasy III. Considering Eureka the Forbidden Land is based off Final Fantasy III, even though they're throwing Final Fantasy V references in there in the way of the Dawn Warriors and Kryl and all of them, I think it is more likely that that's the route we end up taking, that it's Enuo over there and not Exdeath himself. And it's also possible that the legend of Exdeath is based on Enuo's legend, and that they're in some way, like, there's all these ways to pull Omega and the actual, I guess, reality of Eorzea together and relate them without actually just copy-pasting. Yeah, I'm sorry, Enuo was, yeah. Well, I think it's Enuo. Yeah, he's in 5. You're right, he is in 5. He's in the bonus dungeon. I don't know why my brain told me to go back to Final Fantasy 3 there. Yeah. Enuo's from 5, all the same. But regardless, both the games are super void heavy, so I think it's more likely that it's Enuo, and that it's, if Exdeath exists in Omega, it's based off the legend of the Dawn Warriors sealing away an ancient void evil, and not actually Exdeath. Whew. Question number 3. I don't see many people bring this up when talking about Eureka, but in Eureka you get a fuck ton of... Oh, you put tombstones instead of tomestones. How unfortunate. Very quickly, by not even trying, just working on your relics, since most NM bosses give capable tomestones as... oh, you did it the second time. As Stormblood S ranks. I think here's the why is there a reason to run Expert? Luckily, when people don't want to do Eureka anymore, they'll just go and do the old stuff, and that's it. I don't know, people are fine doing other ways to get tomestones, and I don't see this ever becoming an issue or ever needing a nerf. Eureka's gonna be around, it'll always be an option. We've always had a shit ton of options for tomestones and leveling and stuff. Will some people gravitate towards it? I don't think people will be like, let me do Eureka when I need absolutely nothing because I need tomestones. Maybe because they want to sit there and jerk off while everyone else actually spawns the bosses, but who knows? You know, it's always, there's a possibility. But I don't think that they'll need to nerf this part of the game. All right, question number 9. After all that, shit, it's only question number 9. Hey, Mr. Happy, have a good week. You have a good week too. Question, what is your favorite minion in the game? If you don't have one, what would you like to see? I'm absolutely in love with the Castaway Chocobo Chick. Favorite minion. I don't like any one minion over the rest. If picking just one, because I really like the combination minions like Louis Swan and Wind Up Bahamut. But I guess if I had to pick one that was my favorite, I'll go with the fledgling Apkalu, the derp penguin, as I like to call him, from doing the original 80 sightseeing logs from A Realm Reborn. I'm gonna go with the fledgling Apkalu, because he's my little derp penguin. Alright, question number 10. What's up, Happy? Long-time watcher, first-time asker. Welcome. With a live letter coming up with the community manager guest, I love that he's the guest of his own, I love it. There's a topic on the forums asking him questions. I'm sure you know about the botters, a huge problem not talking about RMT. I think I know where this is going, and I don't think asking the global community manager about botting I don't think those two things are even remotely imaginable. You'd really have to take that up with the special task force. You need to have a guest from the special task force for this to have any sort of merit. So let me just make sure this question is going where I think it's going. So player is suggesting to ask about this in the live letter question, so I want to ask you, how likely is it they'll even pick that question, even if it has a high number of likes? I don't think it's on topic. Like, you can't, like, it's not the global community manager's job to deal with botters. Like, maybe if he sees forum posts, it's his job to say, hey, this is getting a lot of traction, you know, make a statement or, look to improve this in some way. But he doesn't ban botters. You know what I mean? So I don't think this is the place or the time to ask about that. If they bring someone on from the special task force, and considering Foxconn is on every single one, it's a pretty high chance he helps organize who actually comes on the show. Asking him how he selects guests and maybe saying, they should bring someone from the special task force on the show, since we've never actually seen or met any of them, you might have better odds asking about that and then trying to get someone from the special task force on the show. And that's it. I think you'd have better luck doing that than trying to ask the global community manager, what about all these bots? It just doesn't line up, if you know what I mean. Oh, there was also a second question here. Alternatively, a second non-14 question. What is your favorite weapon in Monster Hunter World? I'm a hammer bro. If you're not doing the little flippy doos and the little backy swings, then, you're not a hammer bro. That's just a fact. All right, I was about to start answering question number 11, which is on your screen right now, and somebody shared with me that he actually interacts with the special task force, the team that handles illicit activities, the Noct team, which observes real-time tasks like server status, and various other teams related to the community. Then yeah, okay, that completely changed my whole answer. I still think you should ask someone directly from the special task force, but hell, if they're okay, I'll go with that then. Go for it. I still don't think it's going to lead to much, but because there's botters in literally every single MMO that's ever existed. I can't think of one that hasn't had botters. But yeah, go for it. Then yeah, maybe. Yeah. All right, now to question number 11. Hey, Mr. Happy, final sim here. Welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy. I can't say, I don't know why. I tried this. This is actually the second time I'm reading it, and I can't get it any better than I did last week. The weekly Q&A show where we ask questions and you answer them. One, I have 90,000 gems on me. Okay, this is an Opera Omnia question. I already have King's Weapon. Should I pull from this adventure? Honestly, I wouldn't pull from anything prior to the Ramsa banner at this point in Opera Omnia. And even then, there's 3 banners back to back that are all pretty good after the Ramsa banner. It's just the Ramsa banners, there's a much bigger influx of 35 CPU weapons starting with the Ramsa banner. We now have 1 per banner, which is already a bit strange. We're going to start having 2 per banner when that actually happens. So the odds of you getting something that's at least semi-useful is a little bit better. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say at least wait till the Ramsa banner before you pull anything else. Let's see. 2, who do you think will be the next Ultimate fight? I'm kind of hoping Alexander. I hope they don't do Alexander. There's one major reason I kind of hope it's not Alexander, and it's that if we get Alexander, there's going to be pretty heavy expectations that Omega will be the 4.5 one, because it'll be like, well, they did the 2 major raid tiers. Why don't they just do Omega for the 3rd one? And it's been made pretty clear that they're not only going to be doing raid tiers. They're going to be looking at themes like the Warring Triad or Ultima Weapon with all the 6 original primals and not just the 3 that he actually had from the start. You have things like an Odin ultimate because people want a real fight against Odin. That wasn't a complete piece of crap. Like there's other issues to be worked out there, but I don't feel like they can just go from Coil to Alexander and then not have the expectation fall on it being Omega. So I kind of hope they don't do that, but I mean it's going to happen eventually, just not 4.3. 4.3. I personally want to see being the Warring Triad. I think that's a pretty good theme, especially considering we just did Kefka. So continuing with Final Fantasy VI theme for the odd-numbered patch would be, I guess, pretty cool to have. To go from fighting Kefka to fighting Ultimate Warring Triad. But who knows? We'll find out on April 14th. That's the bottom line. And this is the last question over on the forums before I move on to the Twitch chat. What's up, Mr. Happy? Crit ends up being the end-all be-all stat for a majority of jobs due to how it scales exponentially. In store, let SU made adjustments to accuracy and parry to make them better and thus gearing up. Well, they didn't. I guess technically they made adjustments to those stats in that accuracy is based on level versus, I guess, direction that you're fighting the boss from, and parry is you can still parry. Those stats are gone from gear. So yeah, you don't have any dead stats anymore. Tenacity would like to disagree. Just kidding. Tenacity is fine. Sort of. Do you think that they should make other stats scale exponentially to balance them out? Well, you don't just make a stat exponential. You can make a stat scale. I guess you can make the rate at which you gain the stats increase exponentially. But the reason why crit damage is scales the way that it does is because it's both the crit rate and crit damage. With direct hit, you know what that would be? It would be making direct hit scale in percentage, in likeliness of landing a direct hit, and in damage. What does skill speed do? I guess it makes you faster and then exponentially faster. But it's not just I don't know. It's not so much the reason, it's just that crit's better. It's that it gets better the higher your stats are, the more crit will increase because it acts as a multiplier onto your base damage. The more base damage you have, the higher the difference between a non-crit and a crit. It adds up. I don't know. And it's not every job I mean, Samurai right now is what, skill speed? I remember seeing some people talking about skill speed there. Black Mage still likes spell speed. Well, Warrior wants crit now because of Inner Beast, and Dark Knight can run crit, and Paladin still runs mostly direct hit, and Monk likes crit, and Ninja likes crit, and then everyone else likes crit. Does everyone else like crit? I think everyone else likes crit from that point on. I think most people like crit from that point on. Bard, definitely. Yeah. I mean, they need to make adjustments to stats overall because they're still kind of just a little too simple, even though they said that's their goal. But I don't think you can just make the other stats scale the same way and fix the problem. Ultimately, this is a numbers game. And whatever number is best is best. That's it. There's no arguing it unless you have, work that disputes which number is actually best. So it doesn't matter if you make the other stats work that way. If they're better, then people will run with those stats instead. That's all there really is with it. That's just I don't know. That's it. It's all numbers. That's all it is. So I don't think it's ever going to be as much of a balancing act of getting just the right number of stats outside of skill speed, especially because skill and spell speed increasing MP and TP regen. I mean, I guess that would make healers want spell speed more, but I don't fucking need any more TP unless I'm AoEing. And even then, I barely even need any extra TP, so I don't know where the value's going there. So it is what it is. And I don't really have much more to add. So something's always gonna be best when it comes to numbers. So that's my answer. But anyway, that's the last question from the forum. So now I'm gonna grab some questions from the Twitch chat. So Twitch chat, ask me some questions. All right, the first question I have from the chat: when are they fixing Eureka, and why is OGP accepting that Eureka NM train is acceptable content? Race, he said anything about how the community approached Eureka. AFK to get free loot should not be content. I do agree that standing there and doing nothing, and then when the NM spawns, participating in it is something that should be rewarded. But I don't think that there's anything to fix inside of Eureka. Ultimately, you're there for the one fight that matters, and honestly, half the time I try killing enemies that aren't the NM itself, if it's not Wraiths, it most of the time dies so fast I barely get any GCDs. I can only think of really 2 or 3 of the monsters that lead up to the notorious monsters themselves that actually take me more than 1 GCD of contribution before they die or disappear. So I don't think there's anything to fix there. Ultimately, they want you going around with, you know, they at least want you playing with other people. Maybe not necessarily the trains, but it's what we've devolved it into. If that's what we've devolved it into, I don't see an inherent problem, because that's just kind of the way the Final Fantasy XIV community reacts with anything. We've seen it with the hunts for years, and it's never been a problem. People just, we just tell the people who bitch about pulling too early, if we've been waiting like 5-6 minutes, and then you complain about pulling too early, it's like, no, motherfucker, you were late. We're not early, you're late. That's the only real argument that's ever been had there. But it is ultimately a bunch of people not participating in searching for and or spawning said hunt, then showing up and feeling entitled to having, you know, credit for said hunt. And I don't know, it's just never been a big discussion about the hunt, which it is ultimately the same thing, AFKing until a fucking hunt pops and then you just go to it. So I don't see an issue with this. If one person finds it fun versus not finding it fun is a totally different story. But I think that a lot of I think we are going to see a change in the formula and how that works. I think we're going to see more things along the line of force spawning monsters in future Eureka zones. If all goes according to what people are expecting, there will be a total of 4 Eureka zones. Which ones they are, people are probably guessing. I think Pyros, Cryos, and was Geos? No, was it the Lightning one? That was the other one. That's I can never remember the name of the Lightning one, but and in each one there will be a different means of going about that individual zone's progression. I wouldn't be surprised to see something where you actually spawn the boss yourself be more along the lines of what they do going forward. So that way, you know, people have to be active the whole time. But for this current Eureka, they're not going to change anything about the way it works. Maybe add more experience points or make it so that it's a little bit easier to do things for catch-up mechanics later, but that's the end of it. They're not going to do anything to Anemos that's going to change it drastically. All right, the next question from the Twitch chat. Mr. Happy, how do you see the life cycle of Stormblood going in comparison to Heavensward? Felt like we had Heavensward a lot longer, and it seems like Stormblood's already coming to a close once we get 4.3. No, it doesn't. FanFest isn't until November, and 4.3 is probably in May. And FanFest is like when they announce the next expansion. So it doesn't feel anything remotely close like it's coming to a close right now, especially considering we just had the second tier of Omega, and we know we have a third tier coming up. And we know that's not in 4.3, so I don't know. I'm not resonating with that feeling. The life cycle, though, which doesn't necessarily have to compose of your question, it can compose of the content that's participated. I feel like as much as people have been a little bit more, I guess, harsh on Stormblood for having the, you know, it's the fucking same thing I've been dealing with for years. Oh, it's more of the same, blah blah blah. Like, it's the same fucking game. Of course, it's more of the same, but it's still. I don't know. The way people, I guess they attack Stormblood a little bit more than Heavensward. Dude, looking at the track record of Heavensward versus Stormblood going up to just 2 and through 4.2, at least I didn't have to wait an extra month for a patch that ended up lasting one whole fucking day. And we've had some pretty good uses of the extra time that they had so far. Eureka, while not everyone likes it, has generally been successful and has continued to keep people doing it over the last few weeks for whatever reason they have. So people feel more motivated to participate in it, even if not everybody is 100% on board with the way the first one panned out. And we will have more Eurekas. They've already confirmed the next zone, or not, they didn't name it, but just they're already talking about with the next zone, you know, what they're going to be doing differently. We had updates to currently existing systems in Heavensward, such as treasure maps, which we got a new whole zone for that has a whole new level of RNG on top of it that makes it great for harassing people who get kicked out on the first floor or the first floor on the second treasure map. I think they could still make improvements to that. The map inside itself, though, definitely better design than the previous one. Fights that have been nostalgic, for me less so, and more so that I'm interested in Omega himself. They've definitely thrown the nostalgia card out a lot more with Stormblood than they did Heavensward. I don't know. I feel like overall the quality of life of Stormblood has increased so vastly that you spend less time doing individual actions because they're not as cumbersome, and that has led to people exhausting things a little bit faster in Stormblood, and thus not feeling like they have much of a reason to log on anymore. I feel like they've caught up so much with quality of life of Stormblood. It's so quality of life, even when it's not, that you can just burn through things so much faster and at a pace that's so approachable. It's too approachable for those who are hardcore. So the life cycle, I think, for Stormblood has been vastly improved over Heavensward to the point where it almost is too good, because it makes it so you just don't need to fuck around with shit for as long. Plus, we got Ultimate, and I'm a fan of that. So I'd say it's been pretty good, and I think it'll only get better with 4.3. All right, next question from the Twitch chat. Do you think that Eureka is better created for a smaller population? I feel the 100 plus people per instance is a bad decision. As for PS4 players like myself, we need to turn off names, visual effects, and in some very level similar instances, sound just to help see mobs in their attack. I think the PlayStation population is getting the shaft, because Yoshi mentioned or addressed the problem. So I'm gonna put this in a few couple of ways. If Eureka was designed for less people, the zone would probably be about a third the size it is now, which leaves you a lot less to do in that area, because you need to consider how much space each and every one of the activities you have in there is actually taking place. It would basically mean every event would be about 6 feet from the others, and that they'd all be crammed together in an incredibly small area, which means you probably have to dial back on the progression system you have in there as a whole. I think the idea, and this kind of goes back to the other question about having the way that people kind of just sit around and do nothing, A, because it's hard to contribute when everything dies so fast, and B, because quite frankly, you can. I think that encouraging smaller groups to participate in the content with their small groups is more the direction they should go. I think Eureka, from a population standpoint, is better off being this zone that fits a ton of people. However, I feel like they can make design approaches to make it better for 4 to 8 players to participate at a speed that's relevant to them, as opposed to going to the speed that is defined by the community itself. All right, so I had a bunch of discussions after that third question that came from the Twitch chat. Again, they just didn't come off as questions that I really wanted to put in the show, just because of a lot of the times in the discussion points that I've had a million times before. So if you want to see those, then you should be watching Mondays with Mrhappy live on Sundays. I know it's a weekly Q&A. I got to record it the day before, you know? So yeah, every Sunday around 12:30 to 1 Pacific is when I normally do the live recording for it. So that'll still be true next week, because next week, even though I'm going to PAX East, I come back Sunday morning, so I can stream Mondays with Mrhappy after that. Will I? 50-50, because I'm going to be pretty tired after PAX plus traveling for another 6 hours, but we'll see. We'll see. But I'm going to hang out with the Twitch chat for a few more minutes before I wrap things up. So over on the YouTube side of things, thank you for watching. Again, thank you to all of our Patreon sponsors. And if you're going to PAX East, hopefully I'll see you there and give you one of these when you get there. Anyway, thanks. I'll see you guys next week. And until then, take care.